So I'm responsible for, in single family, which is our largest business at Freddie Mac, everything from data governance. So we set the governance standards. We also set the criteria for data quality, for metrics and monitoring of that. We own our business data glossary and metadata management tools. I am also the business owner of all of our data repositories. So I own our corporate data warehouse and a bunch of our data services, and again, large repositories of data. And then the last piece of my responsibility is the enablement of analytics and reporting for the business. So I don't own the responsibility to do the reporting and analytics, but our job is to give the folks that are doing that the tools and the platforms they need to do their jobs. So for example, I'm the owner of our big data platform. I don't own data scientists. I have data modelers, I have project managers, I have IT-related, skilled staff that run, support, build, and expand the platform on behalf of the data scientist. So we have to work very closely with them. So overall for the business, I do own the data strategy and roadmap, and I have responsibility for how we're making investments. So as for example, we're doing our 2017 planning right now. I can't do my planning without working with our analytics teams to understand what are the business challenges that they're trying to solve in the next 3, 6, 9, and 12 months. So we have to have a partnership. I would agree that I like the Lego analogy that I'm dealing with a lot of legacy, Legos in the wrong box that we're trying to clean out and sort up, etc. But what we're trying to do is with every net new thing is have the right governance in place so we don't get our Legos all messed up. So for example, again, while I'm not doing the analytics, we are actually governing how the data scientists are using the platform. Everything from, do they have right access to data, to how are they using different data sets. Two seemingly innocent data sets, when they're separate are fine, but when you put them together, it could create some sort of compliance or privacy risk. My team's doing that. So the reality is there is a certain amount of tension between my team and the analytics folks, and I think that's a good thing. The tension shouldn't be so great that the data scientists can't get their jobs done, but it shouldn't be so loose that they can drive a truck through it. So it's a constant sort of, we have to figure out how to balance and readjust it. I expect the analytics folks to always be a little bit of chirping in my ear that, there's too much process, there's too much this, but it's to protect the integrity of the data, the quality of the data, as well as to give confidence in the outcome of the work they do. We don't want there to be a perception that this big data analytics platform is the wild, wild west with no governance, because then the senior executives may not necessarily believe in the output that's coming out of it. So we've got to find that sort of right push me, pull me between governing the platform and then, the analytics and the nimbleness that those folks or the analytics teams are looking for. It's a lot of conversations, and one of the things I have found, so I've been in my data role for 2 years now, it's a lot about communication and culture change. It's breaking down silos so we can bring data together to find more value with it, but it's also having the right governance. I can't make everybody happy. One of the things, though, that they do know about me and my role is I have the 51% vote. So whether it's, the governance team that works for me is, making the rules too tight, or my analytics stakeholders want to do too much that's, pushing us up against the bounds, I have the 51% vote. I haven't had to exercise it, but everybody does know that I have the say on how we do things. But I'm going to collaborate with my stakeholders. I am actually a huge advocate for our data analytics folks and them trying to add value to the business. And I'm constantly pushing our compliance people and IT, for example, how can we do things faster, cheaper for them, but also make sure we're protecting the company. And the other thing is I do have a background in risk and controls, so that is in my DNA and it's always there. So I straddle the fence between both of them, and I think that again, I'm not going to make everybody happy, but I try to find the right balance. And the other thing I do tell, both my governance team and my data analytics stakeholders, I need feedback. I can't fix it if I don't know that you think that it's not working well for you. So one of the things we do in my team is we have we call it our communication plan. And on a quarterly basis, we walk around the business and we have formal meetings with stakeholders across the business at multiple levels to solicit feedback. And some are very honest and very direct with us. Others we have to sort of pull out the information. But once we get that feedback, how do we need to tweak up what we're doing to make sure we're adding value to the business? but also protecting the business. So it's a little bit, like I said, it's a little bit of push me, pull me. One of the things that's an advantage to me is I report directly to the head of the business. And so I sit at his leadership table every single week, and I'm able to share with him and then his other direct reports what we're working on and why. And so, they've been hearing about this ever since we started the team. They were part of actually forming the vision and what success looked like for the team because they are my stakeholders. So, we tried to make sure that their voice was heard in our strategy and roadmap, and we have that, that feedback loop. There's some of the folks that we actually go and interview every single quarter to make sure we know what's going on and we're delivering them the value. The other thing that we do, and we do this quite a bit, is we do show and tell. So just a few weeks ago, actually a month ago, I actually had a handful of our data scientists that have been doing some R&D type of work on the big data platform, sitting in with my boss and his entire leadership team to show them what they were doing. These are the insights we're finding. And then the leadership team had 1,000 questions. Well, can you go look into this? Well, what about that? So it was a great interactive dialogue where they could see the outcome and the results of what these data scientists had been working on. And I was there in the room as well, so I could talk about, well, this is how we've gone about doing it. This is how we've gone about creating a gold source of the data for them to start with. So I also sort of, added some of that commentary regarding the governance and the control. But we both had to be at the table together to talk about what we were learning. We had several prep meetings. So what I asked them to do was to put together their presentation, and then they sat down with me and took me through it, and then they took their VP through it, and then we actually took it through a broader leadership team. It was actually my leadership team plus my IT team, and we helped them sort of, one, they had tons of content, but you can't go in with tons of content. What are the key messages? So it was an iterative process with them to help them sort of sharpen up what's the message that they wanted to make sure they left with the senior execs. And so I wasn't going to just sort of say, hey, you guys go do it and tell me how it works out. I helped them prep for it, as did their VP. So again, it was this collaborative process to make sure that we really hit hard the important things that we wanted, my boss, the head of the business, to walk out of that room understanding. So it was actually kind of fun seeing the first draft and seeing the first presentation and see how it matured and got sharper and crisper over several iterations. So I think one of the things that when we were considering standing up my data organization, one of the things I thought long and hard about was whether or not the organization was ready to get serious about data. Because the reality is we had tried it a few times in the past at Freddie Mac, and it would get started and then it kind of fizzled out. And there were a lot of reasons why that happened. A lot of them was we had other things going on, like a credit crisis, for example. That required resources to be focused on something else. So as we were talking about standing up the team, I concluded that we were ready because some of these distractions and other things were, behind us, and we'd been talking about this for a really long time. So that was thing one, is, was the organization ready to get serious? Then thing two, when we actually started, launching the data governance program, what my data governance director, the woman that leads it for me, did is she just didn't sit in a room and write a data governance standard. She actually engaged a data governance working group, who are all the people around the organization that own and manage our data. Because again, I don't own and manage data. I write the standards and we help them implement the standards. But we wanted to make sure we were addressing their problems, and when they read the standard, they could see a solution to their data problems. That data governance working group, 2 years in, people are still showing up. And it's because we want to make sure that they are engaged and they have a voice at the table. So again, it's become very collaborative. Again, at the end of the day, I have the 51% vote. I have to make sure that governance meets its objective. But I just said, we just don't want to issue something from on high and say, thou shalt comply. We want to make sure, are we addressing your problems? And so we just actually issued a revision of our data governance standard. Every point that we revised in there came from the business areas that own and manage data. I'm having problems with this. How can we solve this? So it's been really fun that we have that level of engagement. 2 years in, people still show up. The other thing we do as well is we try to make it fun. So one of the things we did just last month is we had Data Fest 2016, and basically it was just a party. We had ice cream sundaes, we had some silly games where we invited all of these folks that have been on this data governance journey with us for the past 2 years, and the objective was just to say thank you, because we can't do it without them. And it really didn't take that much. It was 2 hours on a beautiful fall afternoon. We went outside, we played ring toss type games and things like that. But it was just an opportunity to, network and say thank you. And we got great feedback from that event. Again, it was simple, but it was important to say thank you. The thing to know, so I'm regulated by, Freddie Mac's regulated by the Federal Finance Housing Agency. And they hadn't issued anything on data management, data governance when we started our journey. But we suspected they would. So what we did is we looked out to what all the large financial services institutions were being asked to do through the OCC, the Basel Commission on Banking Supervision, et cetera. And as we were standing up our organization, we consumed everything that all these other large FIs were already being asked to do. Just last week, our regulator issued they call it an advisory bulletin on data governance and management. I can read that and check off everything they're asking us to do because it's highly aligned to what other regulators were asking FIs to do. So I feel like we're in a really good shape. What I try to do though is yes, there's a bunch of stuff we have to do per the regulators, and we have to do the have-to-dos, but when we do those have-to-dos, I try to make sure it has as much of a strategic view to it as we can. So for example, all of the financial institutions have to have something around data glossaries and data lineage. It's just, again, it's a fundamental building block we should all have in place. How can I deliver more value to that? And so we have folded our data glossary and data lineage program into our strategic projects. So we've acquired the tools we want to use, but every net new strategic project we do, we're embedding in that project data glossary work, data lineage work. And now the data scientists are getting, as the projects deploy, all the information about the new data that's now available to them. So I've used strategic activities, I've tucked in the have-to-dos required by the regulators, and we're actually moving the ball down the field on both regulatory and strategic at the same time. And so what I always tell my team, I said we have to be opportunistic. There's a whole list of have-to-dos and a whole list of strategic want-to-dos. How do we marry those two things up? And it doesn't work every time. Sometimes so we've got tight deadlines or whatever on the strategic, we have to defer some of the regulatory or the compliance type work, but then I say, okay, what's our plan to come back and close that circle later? But it takes a lot of conversations with the business owners of those strategic projects to say, I need you to, fold this into your project. And in the beginning, I was like, whoa, don't increase my budget, don't increase my timeline. But the other thing we've done is we've done a lot of the heavy lifting. So I've provided staffing into those projects to take on some of this work as well. So I'm trying to meet them a little bit more than halfway so we can keep the work going. We have to be as nimble as we can be. And sometimes my boss and our CEO says, Jodi, when are you going to be done with data? My answer is 3 to 5 years, no matter when they ask me, because you're never done. And so, we think we have a solid plan for 2017, for example. The reality is something's going to come up. We're going to have to take a step back. We're going to have to make some tweaks and adjustments. One of the things I have committed to my stakeholders is I will be transparent to you about what's going on. So if something comes in out of the blue, there will be a conversation with my governance committee, for example, that says, we thought we were going to do this other thing came up, this is how we're restacking the deck. And then we will, keep on the list of to-dos of that, thing that gets deferred. And that's just the reality is I can't control what I can't control, but what I can do is I can react and be transparent how we react. And it's tough, but I do try to keep any projects that are in flight going and not stop something mid-flight because something new comes up. And so far we've been successful with that, but sometimes we slow things down a little bit so we can redirect resources. But it's an art, it's not a science. Well, I think one of the things, so since I was standing up the organization net new, I had what I call both the luxury and the curse of selecting my leadership team. Because I could pick everybody, right? I wasn't going into a pre-existing role and just inheriting other people's direct reports. I got to pick them all. So that was awesome, but it was also a great burden on me to make sure I selected my leadership team well. And I would have to say I'm very proud of the leadership team that I put together, that we all get along really well. We understand what we're doing. We see the value that we're bringing to the business. And what's interesting in my leadership team is they come from a multiple types of backgrounds. So I've got, two folks that have strong IT backgrounds. I have a person that came out of finance, out of governance and control. I have somebody that has a modeling background. In there as well. I have another person that has a strong finance as well as project management background. So what I love about my leadership team is when we're talking about, the issue of the day, they can give me input from multiple perspectives and backgrounds, which I think helps us make good decisions. Because if it's just were, a strictly IT type of view of it, we'd probably miss a business value connection that we could make to that. The other thing we do is I try to keep us connected to the business strategy. So we have a little infographic that's all over my department called Connecting the Dots. And it starts with our business strategy at the highest level, and it drills down into how does data connect to it. So everybody on my team should be able to look at that infographic and see how the work they're doing connects to the business strategy. Because that's why we're here. We're here to enable the business and make the business successful. So we always try to, and it's something that I've heard other people say too, we tell the stories. How are we actually adding value to the business? So this, Data Mart project we did here, how's it connect to business strategy? How's it connect to business success? So I do have somebody on my team who approximately half of her job is communication only. Because we got to find the stories and elevate them and get them out there so people can see not only my team how the dots all connect, but also our stakeholders, how we're delivering value, the little things as well as the big things. It is. So all of my leadership team actually came from other roles in Freddie Mac. And some of them I approached and said, hey, I need you to come with me, and others just sort of popped up over time and it's all worked out perfectly. But as we're filling in the holes in the team, everybody else is trying to do what we're doing. So there is certainly competition for the same talent in the market. One of the things I do encourage my leadership team to do is have an open mind. You may not ever get the perfect resume, but are there some nuggets in there of experience that are applicable and then to be leverageable, and then you can retrain the person on the rest of it. So if I look at our data governance team, nobody on that team actually has a quote-unquote data governance background. There's a risk and controls person out of finance. There's somebody that actually came out of IT that was programming for a number of years, but we've been able to retrain them and give them opportunities to expand their skill set. So what I look at is do they have the capacity to learn something new? It'd be great if we could find the perfect resume every time, but the reality is that we're not going to. So can we assess their capacity to learn something new and be a good team player and fit into our culture? Then we can teach them what they need to know. The biggest challenge, I would say, is actually on the managers, because they're not going to get the perfect person to drop into a job and hit the ground running and start doing the work. So it becomes a development opportunity for the managers as well. But if they want to get a person in that vacancy they have, they're probably going to have to compromise on what they think is the perfect candidate, and then invest. And I do expect my managers to be people managers and to develop their teams and create opportunities for their teams. But it's hard because we all have 82,000 things to do every day of the week. So I try to, do what I can to help them. I try to be a cheerleader for them. Come into my office and tell me, what resumes are you seeing? Is there anything we can do to look differently at the resumes and maybe think differently about how we, fill in some of these roles? I don't think it's going to get any easier. My team is growing. We have a handful of vacancies right now where we're not, right now the managers would say, I'm not happy with the resumes I'm seeing. So maybe we need to take a step back and think differently about how to fill some of those roles. The other thing that we are seeing happening in my team, because I've got 6 direct reports, we are seeing movement among my 6 direct reports, which I love because, again, somebody who works in our, corporate data warehouse team is getting an opportunity to move over to our master data management team, for example. Again, it's expanding their skill set. It's giving them, it's bringing to bear their Freddie Mac knowledge, but using it in a different way. So I love to see that happen, sort of that, mobility within the team or within the company as well. So what can be done to get more women into the data space? So what I will tell you is I've got 6 direct reports and 4 of them are women. I didn't plan it that way. It just happened to be the way it worked out, which is a good thing. But even then, so we're trying to create opportunities. One of the things we're starting to talk about within my team is how do we get more on campus? And I'd like to get some of my female leadership out on campus so that others can start seeing successful women in a data space. Over half of my team are women right now, at all levels across the board. And again, we didn't plan it that way, it's how it worked out. But I do think, what can I do to mentor other women, whether it's, within Freddie Mac, which is something I've always been involved with, or outside of Freddie Mac. And so I'm involved in a handful of things here and there, and I do try to, reach out and what can I do? Of the 4 women that work for me that are on my direct reports, all of them have jobs they created. And I keep giving them more opportunities to show what they can do. And then I feel like one of the most important things I can do for them is not only give them those opportunities, but then help them to shine and help them to communicate and celebrate their successes. And so when I go and meet with my manager on a monthly basis, I take my team along with me, and they do all the talking to give him the update, because I want them to have direct access to senior leadership so that, should I win the lottery next week, my boss Dave will know all of my direct reports, but also know where the next Jodi could be sitting there at that leadership table. So I feel, again, that's something that's really important for me to do, is to give them opportunities and then let them shine. So the advice I would give to an aspiring CDO or CAO, and this is the thing we learned 2 years ago when we stood up the organization, is you can't communicate enough. You have got to get out there, you have got to talk to the stakeholders, you have to look up and down the organization and find out who are the people that you need to work with, that you can actually either change the way they do their job because you've delivered a new analytic platform, or that you need to be bought into your data governance standard, for example. So we spend a lot of time communicating, and I do everything from, I go to any town hall that somebody wants me to come to, I will come and talk to them. So I'm constantly trying to get our message out there. We also have daily news articles on our internal website. We have a number of things teed up around data. 4 times a year we try to get a data article out there. My team, we have a blog. So about every 3 weeks we issue a new topic. So it's constantly trying to find ways that we can effectively communicate with our stakeholders. I can't emphasize enough how important that has been. And then the other, I call it the 2 C's, it's communication and culture. So while we're doing all this communication, we've also got to change the culture. It's breaking down the silos. It's helping, an analytics team in one part of the business understand that an analytics team in another part of the business, you all have similar needs. You have similar questions. How can I bring you together? And that's I think a lot of companies have that problem, that everybody's in silos, they're working on their thing, and they don't have time to look left and right. Where I sit as the CDO of the business, I can look across everything, and I say I've got to sort of do some matchmaking and get the right people together at tables to talk about, what it is that they're trying to solve, because maybe there's synergy there, and there often is synergy there. So culture, communication. Don't underestimate how important they are.